Ma'am, I need you to empty your pockets and step away from my desk now. Bank manager Mr. Daniel Thompson's voice cut through Midwest Trust Bank like a blade. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor, pointing an accusatory finger at the black woman seated across from him. Every customer in the lobby froze. The woman wore faded jeans and a plain hoodie. No makeup, no jewelry. Daniel's eyes swept over her dismissively before he grabbed hand sanitizer from his desk drawer. People like you don't walk into banks like this asking for millions, he sneered, squirting sanitizer into his palms with theatrical disgust. Security cameras are recording everything, so don't try anything stupid. He wiped his hands slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact with Dr. Maya Richardson. Have you ever witnessed someone being publicly degraded only to discover they held terrifying power? The digital clock above the teller windows glowed at 2:47 p.m. branch closing time. 73 minutes. Daniel Thompson had been having a perfect day until she walked in. 23 years managing this branch, and he developed a sixth sense about troublemakers. The way she'd approached his desk without an appointment, clutching a manila folder like it contained treasure instead of whatever food stamp paperwork was probably inside. Let me guess, Daniel continued, his voice carrying to the dozen customers scattered throughout the lobby. You're here about that business loan application you submitted online. $2.3 million. He chuckled, shaking his head. Do you have any idea what kind of collateral that requires? Dr. Maya Richardson's phone buzzed against the desk. The caller ID flashed briefly. U.S. Treasury Department Director Chun. She declined the call without glancing down, her attention focused entirely on Daniel's performance. Sir, perhaps we could discuss this privately, she said quietly. Oh, I think transparency is important in banking, Daniel replied loud enough for the elderly Caucasian woman at the next desk to hear clearly. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, a longtime customer, looked visibly uncomfortable, but remained silent. Near the corner ATM, 17-year-old Chloe Chun held her phone steady, live streaming to her 200 followers. The viewer count climbed steadily. 347, 521, 698. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. Is this really happening? Someone call the news. Get his name and badge number. Ms. Sofia Gonzalez, a 24-year-old teller behind bulletproof glass, watched the scene unfold with growing horror. She'd worked here 18 months, sending money home to her family in El Salvador. Speaking up meant risking her job. Staying silent meant watching injustice happen 3 feet away. Daniel opened Maya's loan application with exaggerated ceremony. Says here you want to open a community development fund. Invest in minority-owned businesses. He looked up with mock concern. That's very ambitious, but banks deal in reality, not charity cases. Security guard Mr. Samuel Davis shifted near the entrance. Something about the woman seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. The way she carried herself, calm, authoritative, like someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. Her posture never changed despite Daniel's escalating theatrics. These people always aim too high, Daniel muttered to his assistant manager loud enough for everyone to hear. It's like they watch too much TV and think success just happens. Maya's black leather portfolio rested on her lap. Inside, barely visible through the partially open zipper, was what appeared to be an American Express Centurion card. The mythical black card that required spending $250,000 annually just to qualify. The live stream hit 1,200 viewers. Chloe adjusted her angle to capture Daniel's increasingly animated gestures. Ma'am, I'm trying to save you embarrassment, Daniel continued. Community development funds require extensive financial backing, proven track records, connections to established institutions. He gestured around the marble lobby. This isn't the kind of place where people just walk in off the street with big dreams. Mrs. Patterson finally spoke up. Excuse me, but is this really necessary? Can't you discuss her application privately? Daniel turned toward the elderly woman with practiced patience. Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your concern, but we have protocols to protect our legitimate customers from potential fraud situations. The word fraud rippled through the lobby like electricity. Other customers began pulling out phones. The live stream viewer count jumped to 2,100. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID read, FBI Special Agent Williams. Again, she declined without looking. "Sir," she said, her voice remaining steady, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my qualifications." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Daniel replied. "You filled out an online application, probably heard about some government program that makes banks loan money to people who can't pay it back, and figured you'd try your luck." He stood up, his 6 feet 2 inches frame towering over her seated position. "The thing is, we actually verify information here. We check references. We look at real bank statements, not whatever printouts you brought in that folder." Samuel Davis took a step closer. His 15 years in security had taught him to recognize when situations were about to spiral out of control. The woman's composure was remarkable, almost supernatural. Most people would be shouting by now or crying or storming out. She sat like someone waiting for a delayed flight, mildly inconvenienced, but not particularly concerned. "I think," Daniel announced to the entire lobby, "we need to involve the authorities. We've had several incidents lately with people attempting to use false documents for large loan applications." The live stream exploded with comments. Viewer count 3,847. "Call the police on him. This is 2024, not 1924. Someone dox this racist." Chloe whispered into her phone. "Y'all, this is getting crazy. The manager is literally calling the cops on this woman for applying for a business loan." Sofia Gonzalez watched Maya's reaction through the bulletproof glass. Still no emotion, no anger, no fear, just patience. Like someone who knew something nobody else did. Daniel reached for his desk phone. "I'm calling 911. We have protocols for suspicious activity." "Sir," Maya said quietly, "are you certain that's your best option?" Something in her tone made Daniel pause, his hand hovering over the receiver. For a split second, doubt flickered across his face. Then his arrogance returned. "Ma'am, I've been doing this for 23 years. I know exactly what I'm dealing with." He lifted the phone and began dialing. The digital clock read 3:15 p.m. branch closing. 45 minutes. Daniel's call to 911 had been brief and theatrical. "Midwest Trust Bank, 455 Commerce Street. We have a suspicious individual attempting financial fraud. Black female, approximately 40, refuses to leave premises after loan denial." Dr. Maya Richardson listened to every word without flinching. Her dark eyes tracked Daniel's movements as he hung up, clearly pleased with his performance. "Officers will be here in 10 minutes, he announced to the lobby. "Ma'am, I strongly suggest you gather your things and leave voluntarily before this becomes a criminal matter." The live stream had exploded. Chloe Chen's viewer count hit 8,200, with comments scrolling so fast they blurred together. She'd started a second hashtag, #Midwest Trust Racism. Local Twitter accounts were already sharing clips. "This manager is insane. Someone called Channel 7 News. Where is this bank? We need to boycott." 3 blocks away, Channel 7 reporter Ms. Linda Park received the tip from her news director. "Possible discrimination incident at Midwest Trust, Commerce Street. Viral video building. Get there now." Back in the bank, Sofia Gonzalez had made a decision. She approached her supervisor, assistant manager Mr. Kevin Brooks, who'd been watching the scene from behind the teller counter. "Kevin, this isn't right," she whispered. "The woman hasn't done anything wrong. She just applied for a loan." Kevin, a nervous 28-year-old who'd been promoted beyond his competence, shook his head rapidly. "Sophia, Daniel knows what he's doing. We don't interfere with management decisions. But what if corporate finds out? What if this goes viral?" "It won't," Kevin said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Daniel's been here longer than both of us combined." Mrs. Eleanor Patterson had heard enough. At 73, she'd banked with Midwest Trust for 41 years, keeping substantial retirement accounts that made her opinions valuable to management. She stood up from her desk, her designer handbag clutched firmly. "Excuse me, young man," she called to Daniel. "I'm Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, account number 4471 to 9923. I've been a customer here since 1983. Daniel's demeanor shifted instantly. Mrs. Patterson represented the kind of client who made his performance reviews shine. Wealthy, established, connected to the community's power structure. "Mrs. Patterson, of course. How can I help you? You can explain why you're treating this woman like a criminal for applying for a business loan." The challenge hung in the air. Daniel felt the weight of multiple phone cameras pointed at him. The live stream audience now approaching 12,000 viewers, and Mrs. Patterson's steely gaze. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we have security protocols." "Security protocols for what?" "She's sitting quietly at your desk with paperwork." Dr. Maya Richardson spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your support, but I can handle this situation." Something in her tone made Samuel Davis step closer. 28 years of security work, military, corporate, federal contracts, had trained him to recognize authority. The way she said, "I can handle this," wasn't defensive or hopeful. It was matter-of-fact, like someone stating they could handle their own luggage. Daniel sensed the mood shifting. The live stream, Mrs. Patterson's intervention, and the growing crowd of onlookers were creating pressure he hadn't anticipated. Time to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced loudly, "I understand this looks uncomfortable, but we have a responsibility to protect legitimate customers from potential fraud schemes. This individual submitted a loan application for $2.3 million with insufficient documentation." Maya opened her black leather portfolio. "Mr. Thompson, you haven't actually reviewed my documentation. I've seen enough to know. You glanced at the first page of my application and made assumptions based on my appearance." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Daniel's face flushed red. Around the lobby, customers leaned forward. Chloe adjusted her phone angle to capture his reaction. "Ma'am, that is completely false. I review every application with the same professional standards." "Then review mine." The simplicity of her challenge created an impossible situation. If Daniel refused, he'd look prejudiced in front of cameras. If he accepted, he'd have to admit he'd been performing for the audience rather than doing his job. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "But when the police arrive and find discrepancies in your documents, don't blame me for following protocol." Maya placed a thick folder on his desk. "Please take your time." Daniel opened the folder with elaborate skepticism, expecting to find amateur business plans and inflated financial projections. Instead, he discovered documentation that made his breath catch. Federal employment verification from the U.S. Treasury Department, investment portfolio statements showing liquid assets exceeding $4.2 million, business credit reports with AAA ratings from all three agencies, letters of recommendation from 2 Federal Reserve Bank presidents and a U.S. senator. His hands trembled slightly as he turned pages. This wasn't possible. People with this level of financial credentials didn't walk into suburban bank branches wearing hoodies and jeans. They had private bankers. They conducted business in mahogany-paneled offices downtown. "There must be some mistake," he muttered. "What kind of mistake?" Maya asked quietly. Daniel's mind raced. The documentation looked legitimate, but his 23 years of experience told him this was wrong. High-net-worth individuals had a certain look, a certain presentation. They drove luxury cars and wore expensive clothes. They didn't sit patiently while being insulted. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Regional Manager Sarah Blake. "Daniel, what the hell is happening at your branch?" Sarah's voice was sharp with panic. "My phone is exploding with calls about some racist incident. There's a live stream with 15,000 viewers showing you calling the police on a customer." Daniel stepped away from his desk, lowering his voice. "Sarah, I have the situation under control. Potential fraud case. I called authorities as a precaution." Daniel, corporate is receiving dozens of calls. The hashtag Midwest Trust Racism is trending locally. "Fix this immediately." I'll handle it, Daniel said, but Sarah had already hung up. He returned to find Maya reviewing her own documents as if double-checking their accuracy. Her phone buzzed again, this time showing FBI Special Agent Williams, for the third time. Again, she declined the call. "Ma'am," Daniel said, his voice less confident than before. "These documents will need to be verified through proper channels." "Of course," she agreed. "Shall I call Treasury Secretary Chin directly? Or would you prefer to go through normal verification procedures?" Daniel's mouth went dry. Treasury Secretary Chun wasn't someone branch managers casually contacted for document verification. The casual way she mentioned his name suggested a familiarity that should be impossible. That won't be necessary. Let me just—" The bank's front door chimed. 2 police officers entered, their presence immediately commanding the lobby's attention. Officer Martinez, a 10-year veteran, and Officer Johnson, newer to the force, approached Daniel's desk. "We received a call about a possible fraud situation," Officer Martinez asked. Daniel suddenly realized he was about to accuse someone with apparently legitimate federal connections of fraud in front of 15,000 live stream viewers, multiple phone cameras, and 2 police officers. For the first time since this began, Dr. Maya Richardson smiled. The digital clock read 3:28 p.m. 2 police officers stood in the marble lobby while 16,400 people watched via live stream. Officer Martinez, a veteran with kind eyes, approached Daniel's desk with practiced caution. "Sir, you reported a fraud situation." Daniel's confidence wavered as he gestured toward Dr. Maya Richardson. "This individual submitted a loan application with questionable documentation. When I tried to discuss proper procedures, she became uncooperative." "Uncooperative? How?" Officer Johnson asked, noting the woman's calm posture and the stack of official-looking papers on the desk. She insisted on having her application reviewed despite obvious discrepancies." Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow. "She wanted her loan application reviewed. That's why you called the police." The live stream comments exploded with sarcasm and outrage. Chloe Chen had to restart her stream twice as viewer numbers crashed the platform. "He called the cops because she wanted her loan reviewed. This man needs to be fired immediately. Someone get this manager's name." Dr. Richardson stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. "Officers, I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding." She reached into her black leather portfolio and withdrew a leather credential wallet. When she opened it, Officer Martinez's expression changed instantly. "Federal credentials," she said simply. "Dr. Maya Richardson, Senior Compliance Officer, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Badge number FR 2847. The silence in the bank was absolute. Daniel's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Mrs. Patterson gasped audibly. Samuel Davis unconsciously straightened to attention, his military training recognizing federal authority. Officer Martinez examined the credentials carefully. Real federal badges had specific security features. Holographic seals, unique serial numbers, special paper that felt different from counterfeits. These were genuine. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said, his tone shifting to respectful formality. "I apologize for any confusion. May I ask why you're here?" "I'm conducting an unannounced compliance investigation into discrimination complaints filed against this branch." Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. "Mr. Thompson has been under federal observation for approximately 41 minutes. Daniel's legs nearly gave out. Federal observation? 17 discrimination complaints have been filed against this branch in the past 8 months. The Federal Reserve takes such allegations seriously, particularly when they suggest systematic violations of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act." She turned toward Daniel with professional calm. "Every interaction we've had has been recorded for federal investigation purposes." Daniel's face was drained of color. "Recorded." Dr. Richardson opened her portfolio further, revealing a small digital recording device with a red light glowing steadily. Federal compliance officers are authorized to gather evidence during discrimination investigations. This device has captured 43 minutes of our conversation. She pulled out a second device, a sophisticated digital camera with a telephoto lens. Visual documentation has also been standard procedure. Every gesture, every facial expression, every witness reaction. Officer Johnson whistled softly. "Sir, you called the FBI on a Federal Reserve investigator." I didn't know. She didn't identify herself." "Mr. Thompson," Dr. Richardson interrupted gently, "federal investigators aren't required to announce their presence during compliance audits. That would defeat the purpose of investigating authentic behavior." Maria Gonzalez watched through bulletproof glass, her heart pounding. She'd witnessed discrimination before, but never seen it documented by federal authorities in real time. Mrs. Patterson spoke into stunned silence. "Young lady, are you saying this bank has been discriminating against customers?" "The investigation is ongoing," Dr. Richardson replied diplomatically. "However, preliminary data suggests concerning patterns. This branch shows a 67% loan denial rate for black applicants compared to 12% for white applicants with similar qualifications." She opened another section of her portfolio, revealing detailed statistical reports. Over the past 18 months, this branch has denied 847 loan applications from minority applicants while approving 923 applications from white applicants with identical or lower credit scores. The live stream viewer count hit 22,000. Comments flooded faster than human eyes could track. "She's Federal Reserve. This manager is so fired. Government sting operation live." Kevin Brooks, the assistant manager, had been watching from behind the teller counter with growing horror. He approached Dr. Richardson tentatively. "Ma'am, I'm Kevin Brooks, assistant manager. I want to state for the record that I disagreed with Mr. Thompson's approach. I thought he was being unprofessional." Dr. Richardson's eyes met his steadily. "Mr. Brooks, our investigation covers all management personnel. Your actions during the past 43 minutes have been documented. Did you intervene when you noticed discriminatory behavior?" Kevin's face paled. Well, Daniel is my supervisor." "I see. So you witnessed potential civil rights violations but chose not to act due to workplace hierarchy." The question hung in the air like a blade. Kevin realized he might be as complicit as Daniel. Daniel's phone rang. The caller ID showed his worst nightmare. Bank President Robert Chun. "Take it," Dr. Richardson suggested. "He's probably watching the live stream." Daniel's hands shook as he answered. "Mr. Chun, I can explain." "Daniel, what have you done?" President Chen's voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" "Sir, she didn't identify herself." Dr. Richardson could have shut down this entire branch with a single phone call. "She has direct authority from the Federal Reserve Board. You just performed exactly the kind of discrimination she was sent to investigate." The phone went silent for several seconds. "How many people are watching this disaster?" Daniel looked at Chloe's phone screen. 22,000, sir." 22,000? "Daniel, you've created a national banking scandal. Put Dr. Richardson on immediately." Daniel extended the phone with a trembling hand. Dr. Richardson accepted it with professional courtesy. "President Chun, this is Dr. Richardson." "Dr. Richardson, I am mortally embarrassed. Please accept my deepest apologies for this employee's conduct. How can we remedy this situation? We'll discuss remediation after I complete my investigation. However, I should mention that this interaction has been witnessed by approximately 22,000 people via livestream, with clips being shared across multiple social media platforms." More silence from the phone. "Are we looking at federal penalties?" The Equal Credit Opportunity Act carries fines ranging from $50,000 to $300,000 per documented violation. Today's interaction alone constitutes multiple violations. The broader investigation suggests systematic issues that could result in criminal referrals. Dr. Richardson pulled out her phone and showed the screen to Officer Martinez. "I should also mention that I've been in contact with the FBI Financial Crimes Division throughout this investigation." Officer Martinez stepped forward. Dr. Richardson, do you require any assistance with your federal investigation? Thank you, Officer Martinez. Actually, yes. She turned toward Daniel with devastating calm. Mr. Thompson called the FBI claiming I was committing fraud. Perhaps you could contact Agent Williams and let him know the situation has been resolved. Agent Williams? Officer Johnson asked. Special Agent Marcus Williams, Financial Crimes Division. He's been expecting my call. She showed them her phone, revealing missed calls from FBI Special Agent Williams over the past hour. Officer Martinez understood immediately. You've been in contact with federal investigators this entire time. Agent Williams has been tracking this compliance investigation. When Mr. Thompson called 911, federal protocols required Agent Williams to respond. He's currently 3 minutes away. Daniel sank into his chair as the full scope of his mistake became clear. He'd called the FBI to arrest a federal investigator who was already working with the FBI on a discrimination case against his bank. Samuel Davis approached Dr. Richardson's desk. Ma'am, I need to apologize. I recognized something familiar about you, but couldn't place it. I should have realized you were law enforcement. Mr. Davis, your military background is noted in our file. Former Army MP. Correct. Yes, ma'am. 12 years. Your restraint during this situation has been professional. Unlike some others present, you didn't participate in discriminatory behavior. The distinction wasn't lost on Daniel or Kevin. Dr. Richardson addressed the entire lobby. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to clarify the scope of what you've witnessed. This wasn't simply rude customer service. Under federal banking law, what occurred here constitutes multiple violations of civil rights legislation. She enumerated on her fingers: discriminatory lending practices, violation of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, potential criminal civil rights violations under Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act, filing false police reports about federal investigators. The front door chimed again. A tall black man in a dark suit entered, moving with the confident stride of federal law enforcement. His eyes swept the lobby, taking in the phone recordings, the police officers, and the crowd of customers. Special Agent Marcus Williams approached Dr. Richardson's position. When he reached her, he straightened and gave a crisp salute. Dr. Richardson, ma'am, Agent Williams, Financial Crimes Division. I apologize for the delayed response. 22,000 live stream viewers watched a federal agent salute the woman Daniel had tried to humiliate. Daniel's career ended at that moment. Agent Williams turned toward the police officers. Officers, thank you for responding. This is a federal compliance investigation. Dr. Richardson has full authority here. He faced Daniel directly. Sir, are you the manager who called the FBI claiming Dr. Richardson was committing fraud? Daniel couldn't form words because filing false reports about federal investigators constitutes obstruction of justice under Title 18, Section 1505 of the U.S. Criminal Code. That's a federal felony carrying up to 5 years imprisonment. The live stream chat exploded with fire emojis and shocked face reactions. Chloe Chen whispered into her phone. Y'all, this manager might actually get arrested by the FBI. Dr. Richardson raised a hand diplomatically. Agent Williams, Mr. Thompson was unaware of my federal status. However, his behavior during this investigation has been thoroughly documented. She addressed Daniel directly for the first time since revealing her identity. Mr. Thompson, you made several statements about people like me and my type of financial situation. You suggested I would be more comfortable at a check cashing store. You called the police when I requested a loan application review. This behavior occurred while I presented legitimate federal employment credentials and documentation showing liquid assets exceeding $4 million. Daniel's mouth moved soundlessly. Your actions today have been witnessed by thousands of people and documented with federal-grade recording equipment. This evidence will be submitted to the Federal Reserve Board, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Mrs. Patterson spoke into stunned silence. Excellent question. The Federal Reserve will require this bank to review every loan denial from the past 24 months. Customers who were improperly denied will receive priority reconsideration and potential compensation for damages. Agent Williams consulted his phone. Dr. Richardson, I should mention that this live stream has been shared by Congressman Miller and Senator Washington. They're requesting immediate congressional briefings on banking discrimination. The scope of Daniel's disaster expanded beyond his comprehension. Congressional attention meant national media coverage, federal hearings, and regulatory scrutiny that could affect the bank's federal charter. President Chen's voice crackled through Daniel's phone, which was still lying on the desk. Dr. Richardson, I'm en route via helicopter. ETA 7 minutes. Please don't make any final determinations until I arrive. She picked up the phone. President Chen, emergency interventions won't change the documented evidence. However, I'm willing to discuss compliance remediation options. Thank you. Daniel, you're suspended immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Daniel finally found his voice. Sir, I was protecting the bank's interests. You just cost this bank millions in regulatory fines and created a national scandal. You're terminated with cause, effective immediately. Kevin, you're suspended pending investigation. Sofia Gonzalez is promoted to interim branch manager. The line went dead. 22,000 people had watched a bank manager's career implode in real time because he couldn't see beyond the color of a customer's skin. The helicopter's rotors thundered overhead at 3:52 p.m. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, customers watched a sleek corporate aircraft descend onto the bank's parking lot, scattering autumn leaves and drawing stares from gathering news crews. Bank President Mr. Robert Chen emerged in a $3,000 suit, flanked by 2 corporate attorneys and Chief Legal Counsel Ms. Sarah Kim. His normally composed demeanor showed cracks of panic as he strode toward the entrance. Phone pressed to his ear. Stock price is down 11% in the last hour, he was saying. How many news outlets have picked this up? The live stream had reached 34,000 viewers. Hashtag Midwest Trust Racism was trending nationally. Local news trucks lined Commerce Street like a parade of accountability. Dr. Maya Richardson remained seated at Daniel's former desk, reviewing her documentation with Agent Williams. Her federal recording device continued capturing every sound, every conversation, every corporate damage control attempt about to unfold. President Chen burst through the bank's front doors with the urgency of a man watching his empire crumble in real time. His eyes immediately found Dr. Richardson, and his stride faltered. She looked exactly like what she was, a senior federal official who just documented systematic discrimination at his flagship branch. Dr. Richardson, he said, approaching with the careful respect reserved for people who could destroy careers with a phone call. I'm Robert Chen, bank president. I cannot express how deeply sorry I am about this incident. She stood with professional courtesy. President Chen, I believe we need to discuss your institution's compliance with federal banking regulations. Absolutely. Should we move to a private conference room? No. This investigation began in public view. Resolution discussions will continue the same way. Chen's corporate attorneys exchanged worried glances. Public negotiations meant no ability to control messaging or limit legal exposure. Agent Williams stepped forward. President Chen, I'm Special Agent Williams, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need to discuss potential criminal violations stemming from today's events. Criminal violations? Dr. Richardson opened her portfolio and withdrew a thick federal compliance manual. Mr. Chen, your employee, Daniel Thompson, violated multiple sections of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act while under federal observation. Let me be specific. She turned to a marked page. Section 102.4 prohibits discriminatory treatment based on race. Mr. Thompson explicitly stated that people like me should use check-cashing stores instead of banks. Chen winced visibly. Section 1002.9 requires equal treatment in loan application processing. Mr. Thompson refused to review my complete application based on my appearance. The live stream audience watched a federal compliance officer systematically dismantle a bank president's day. Section 102.14 prohibits discouraging applications. Mr. Thompson actively discouraged my loan application and suggested I was attempting fraud. Chen's lead attorney, Mr. David Park, stepped forward. Dr. Richardson, perhaps we could discuss settlement parameters? Mr. Park, this isn't a civil matter requiring settlement. These are federal regulatory violations requiring remediation and potential criminal referrals. She pulled out a second document. Your bank's lending data shows systematic discrimination patterns. Over 18 months, this branch denied loans to 67% of black applicants versus 12% of white applicants with identical credit profiles. Those numbers, Chun started, are from your own internal reports submitted quarterly to the Federal Reserve. The pattern is mathematically impossible without intentional discrimination. Agent Williams consulted his tablet. President Chun, these statistics suggest systematic civil rights violations under Title VIII that carries criminal penalties, including imprisonment for bank officers who facilitate discriminatory practices. The corporate legal team huddled briefly. Ms. Sarah Kim emerged as their spokesperson. Dr. Richardson, what remediation does the Federal Reserve require? Excellent question. Dr. Richardson pulled out a prepared list. Option 1. Immediate federal intervention. We freeze your assets, launch criminal investigations, and refer this matter to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Chen's face went white. Option 2. Comprehensive compliance restructuring under federal oversight. This includes specific requirements. She enumerated systematically. First, immediate termination of all personnel involved in discriminatory practices. Mr. Thompson and Assistant Manager Brooks are permanently banned from banking industry employment. Kevin Brooks, who'd been watching from the teller area, slumped against the counter. Second, establishment of a $5 million community development fund, specifically for minority business loans administered by independent oversight. Chen's attorneys scribbled notes frantically. Third, mandatory bias training for all employees conducted by federal contractors with quarterly testing requirements. Failure results in immediate termination. Mrs. Patterson, still recording with her phone, nodded approvingly. Fourth, installation of real-time discrimination monitoring software that flags potential bias incidents and reports directly to federal regulators. Fifth, quarterly community audits conducted by independent civil rights organizations with results published publicly. The scope of federal oversight was staggering. Chun realized his bank would operate under microscopic scrutiny for years. Sixth, immediate review of every loan denial from the past 24 months. Customers who were improperly denied receive priority reconsideration and compensation for damages. Agent Williams added, President Chun, these requirements are non-negotiable. Dr. Richardson has documented evidence of systematic discrimination. The alternative is criminal prosecution and potential loss of your federal banking charter. Chun understood the mathematics of survival. Fighting federal regulators meant certain destruction. Compliance meant expensive humiliation, but continued existence. Dr. Richardson, we accept your remediation requirements. Excellent. However, implementation begins immediately. She turned toward Sofia Gonzalez, who was still standing behind the teller counter. Miss Gonzalez, please step forward. Sofia approached nervously. Miss Gonzalez, you're promoted to branch manager. Effective immediately. Your first responsibility is implementing federal compliance requirements. The 24-year-old teller who'd been afraid to speak up an hour ago was suddenly running the branch where she'd been marginalized. Your second responsibility is hiring a diverse management team that reflects this community's demographics. Dr. Richardson addressed the entire lobby. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed systematic discrimination being challenged and defeated through legal channels. This is how institutional change happens, through documentation, evidence, and federal enforcement. Chloe Chen, whose live stream had started this avalanche, raised her hand. Dr. Richardson, will other banks face similar investigations? Ms. Chun, your documentation today has been invaluable. The Federal Reserve is launching comprehensive audits of. Chen's phone buzzed constantly. Calls from board members, investors, and crisis management firms. The stock price continued falling as news outlets picked up the story. President Chun, Dr. Richardson continued. Your cooperation today will be noted in our federal report. However, compliance monitoring will continue indefinitely. I understand completely. Agent Williams stepped forward. President Chun, there's one additional matter. Daniel Thompson filed a false police report claiming Dr. Richardson was committing fraud. The FBI takes false reports about federal investigators seriously. Agent Williams, Mr. Thompson is terminated and banned from banking. Will cooperate fully with any criminal investigation. Dr. Richardson closed her portfolio with decisive finality. President Chun, you have 72 hours to implement Phase 1 of compliance restructuring. Federal monitors will arrive Monday morning. We'll be ready. She turned toward the assembled customers, many still recording with phones. Thank you all for your patience during this federal investigation. Your witness testimony has been crucial for ensuring accountability. Mrs. Patterson spoke up. Dr. Richardson, how can ordinary customers help prevent discrimination? Document everything. Record when safe to do so. File complaints with federal regulators. Discrimination thrives in darkness, but withers under public scrutiny. Agent Williams gathered his equipment. Dr. Richardson, shall I file the federal report? Submit it within the hour. Include all video evidence, audio recordings, and witness statements. She looked around the marble lobby one final time. At Sofia Gonzalez, who was already reviewing management procedures. At Samuel Davis, who stood prouder knowing he'd witnessed justice. At the customers who'd learned their voices mattered. At the empty desk where Daniel Thompson's career had ended. Ladies and gentlemen, systematic change requires both individual courage and institutional accountability. Today you provided the courage. Federal oversight will ensure the accountability. The helicopter rotors started spinning again outside. President Chun would return to corporate headquarters facing the most expensive compliance restructuring in banking history. But Dr. Maya Richardson's work was complete. She documented discrimination, forced institutional change, and demonstrated that quiet competence ultimately defeats loud prejudice. Daniel Thompson's humiliation of a black woman in a hoodie had cost his bank millions of dollars and transformed an entire community's relationship with institutional power. 6 weeks later, the transformation was undeniable. Sofia Gonzalez stood behind the same marble counter where she'd once counted money in silence, now wearing a crisp manager's blazer and reviewing loan applications with newfound authority. The nameplate on Daniel's former desk read, Sofia Gonzalez, branch manager. In bold letters, Mrs. Patterson, your grandson's small business loan has been approved, she announced to the elderly woman who'd become the branch's most vocal advocate for fairness. 2.1% interest rate. Exactly what we discussed. Mrs. Patterson beamed. Sophia, you've transformed this place completely. The changes were visible everywhere. Digital monitors displayed real-time diversity metrics, loan approval rates by demographic, customer satisfaction scores, and compliance ratings that updated hourly. The AI monitoring system Dr. Richardson had mandated flagged potential bias automatically, sending alerts to federal regulators within minutes. Samuel Davis had been promoted to Community Relations Coordinator. His military bearing now channeled into building trust with customers who'd previously avoided the bank. His office wall displayed certificates from federal diversity training alongside photos of community events. Mr. Brown, your loan application looks excellent, Samuel told a young black entrepreneur seeking startup capital. Sophia can walk you through approval within 24 hours. The $5.2 million Community Development Fund had already approved 43 minority-owned business loans, creating 156 new jobs in surrounding neighborhoods. Success stories filled local newspapers. The Honduran family opening a restaurant, the black teenager launching a tech startup, the elderly Vietnamese woman expanding her tailoring business. Dr. Richardson's federal monitoring had revolutionized more than just lending practices. Customer service scores had improved 340% as employees underwent mandatory bias training every quarter. The anonymous reporting system logged complaints that were investigated within 48 hours. Daniel Thompson's fate served as an industry-wide warning. Banned permanently from banking, he'd taken a door-to-door insurance job, paying 1/3 of his former salary. Local news outlets occasionally featured him as a cautionary tale about workplace discrimination. Kevin Brooks faced federal investigation, but avoided criminal charges by cooperating fully with compliance restructuring. He worked now as a customer service representative at a credit union, his management ambitions permanently derailed. The ripple effects extended far beyond Midwest Trust Bank. Dr. Richardson's live-streamed investigation had triggered congressional hearings on banking discrimination. Senator Washington used the viral video during committee testimony, forcing regulatory agencies to audit 847 financial institutions nationwide. 12 other banks had implemented identical monitoring systems preemptively, recognizing that federal compliance visits were inevitable. The American Bankers Association issued new guidelines explicitly prohibiting discriminatory language and requiring real-time bias training. Chloe Chin, whose live stream started the avalanche, had parlayed her documentation skills into a journalism internship with the Federal Reserve's Public Affairs Division. The phone that recorded the moment that changed everything now sat in the Smithsonian Civil Rights Collection. This shows how individual actions can create systematic change, she explained to visitors during guided tours. One person refusing to accept discrimination can transform entire industries. Wow! The transformation wasn't merely procedural. It was cultural. Branch employees who'd once whispered about certain customers now actively recruited minority-owned businesses. Loan officers celebrated diversity metrics alongside profit margins. Sofia Gonzalez had hired a management team reflecting the community's demographics. A Somali assistant manager, a Latino loan officer, and a Black customer service director. Decision-making conversations now included perspectives that had been systematically excluded. The quarterly community audits mandated by federal oversight had become celebrations rather than inspections. Independent civil rights organizations consistently rated the branch among the top 5% nationally for inclusive banking practices. Financial results exceeded all projections. Minority business loans showed lower default rates than traditional lending, generating profits that silenced corporate skeptics. The Community Development Fund had become a model replicated by banks across 12 states. President Robert Chin, initially humiliated by the public compliance restructuring, now spoke at banking conferences about diversity as a competitive advantage. Dr. Richardson's intervention saved our institution, he admitted during a Harvard Business School case study interview. We were practicing discrimination that was morally wrong and financially stupid. The Federal Reserve's broader investigation had revealed discriminatory patterns at 23% of audited banks, resulting in $847 million in fines and compliance costs. But institutions that embraced inclusive practices showed improved customer satisfaction and higher profitability. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, now 76, served on the Federal Reserve's Community Advisory Board, ensuring that customer perspectives shaped banking policy at the highest levels. Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd witnessed injustice challenged and defeated. Dr. Richardson showed us that documentation defeats discrimination. She testified before Congress. When good people record bad behavior, systematic change becomes inevitable. The broader implications extended beyond banking. Dr. Richardson's approach, methodical documentation, federal authority, public accountability, had been adopted by civil rights investigators in housing, employment, and education. Life stories like these remind us that ordinary moments can generate extraordinary change. One woman's refusal to accept humiliation had restructured an entire industry's relationship with racial equity. Today, discrimination complaints in banking have decreased 67% nationally. Minority business lending has increased 89%. The economic empowerment Dr. Richardson documented in that marble lobby has spread across thousands of communities. These touching stories prove that justice isn't abstract. It's personal, immediate, and achievable when courage meets documentation.